listener production.
Hey, it's Antoinette Lattouf with the Weekend Briefing. There aren't many comedians in Australia who've had the level of continued success that my guest today has had. Shaun Micallef is an actor, a writer, a television presenter and a comedian, and he first gained recognition as a cast member of the hilarious sketch comedy show Full Frontal. So this led to his own sketch show 26 years ago, and since then he's hosted a range of shows bearing his name. And his latest endeavour is on SBS. The new show is called Shaun Micallef's Origin Odyssey, and it takes a bunch of comics back to where they came from, for want of a better expression. And in this chat with Shaun, he reflects on his career, the bits he's super proud of, some of the stuff that makes him cringe, and, well, I had to ask why in 2024 the multicultural broadcaster still chooses middle-aged white men to host shows when there's a plethora of other fabulous and funny talent to choose from. Then, of course, it's the Weekend List with Helen Smith, and we've got some viewing tips for you this week, an excellent autobiography and some tunes. But first, here's my chat with Shaun Micallef. Shaun Micallef, welcome to the Weekend Briefing.
Antoinette, well, it's a pleasure to be here. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm living the dream.
What is your dream, Antoinette?
Oh, just to keep a low profile and stay out of trouble.
Okay, that's not bad. I would like that. Is it working?
No, it's not working. But you've got to keep trying, right? You got to aim high.
Yeah, you're trying something. Your agenda is double-barreled. You want to keep a low profile and
stay out of trouble. Yes.
I don't think you need to do both.
You think I'm asking for too much?
Yeah, I reckon you're overreaching. I think staying out of trouble is probably the primary objective. I think you can have a high profile and stay out of trouble.
Okay, well, you've managed to do that for the most part of your career, which is a good thing.
I've never been in trouble. That's true. I have, a knock on wood, I have managed not to be cancelled or there's never been any scandal associated with me.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can change that. Let's see if we can change that today.
Sure. Yeah, fire away.
For the record, you are a former lawyer, not a failed lawyer.
A successful lawyer.
A very successful lawyer. There's something interesting there. It's not necessarily a trajectory most people would think of when they think of comedian.
No, but it does. It's a profession that does lend itself to those who are maybe naturally theatrical, and that might not mean that the law has anything to do with it. It's just that it happens to be a degree, firstly, that attracts people who don't want to do too many contact hours per week. When I was studying law, it was probably about 7 contact hours a week, and that's it. You could choose to attend tutorials, or you could choose to take advantage of what the university was offering in terms of extracurricular stuff, which in my case was footlights. So review was something that I was attracted to. I spent a lot of time writing and performing in university reviews. So that might account for why so many theatre people or people who end up in media go through that. There's also really good training, I think. I found that the forensic training in terms of interrogation or in terms of cross-examination, all that sort of stuff is actually quite helpful as a writer, because you're taught to obviously, given a set of circumstances, presumably there's a problem that needs to be solved, and you are trained to be able to break up that problem into smaller, difficult problems. You go, okay, well, this is 6 problems. This is not one huge problem, and you tease it out and you can solve those individual problems and thereby solve the entirety of the problem. So I think that's helpful as a writer as well. And then the theatrical side, the display, the use of rhetoric and the sophistry that goes on with being a barrister probably satisfies a lot of people's need to perform.
Well, you've had an enormously illustrious career over several decades. You have 3 children. I'm going to ask you a question that women in the public eye just love being asked. How did you juggle it all, Shaun?
Well, I don't know. You drop it a few times, don't you? You can't juggle instinctively. You have to find it out. And also, there've been occasions years later when my boys are in their 20s now, when I think, in retrospect, I maybe shouldn't have spent so much time regarding myself as the centre of the universe. So, my life, looking back on it, is not beyond reproach. But I had a good partnership, with my partner, and between us, we seem to have the boys have avoided being sent to prison.
Good
I have a
work.
pretty low bar in terms of success. That's it for me. As long as they haven't ended up in prison, I think it's been a successful.
Keep them alive and not incarcerated, and that's a parenting win.
I think so.
Looking back at your career, are there any moments or performances or even shows that you look back at and no longer find funny? Things that you were like, or just no longer find interesting? And similarly, are there things you look back at and go, man, God, I was good?
I don't often look back at stuff. Even with something like Mad as Hell, which was a program that relied every week on whatever was happening in the news, I don't know, the day after it went to air would probably be the last time I saw it. I wouldn't go back and, because there's not time, because you've got to get another one ready, but also because it all disappeared in terms of its reason for being. It tended to disappear because it was a topical show. To be honest with you, most things that I've done, when I have looked back on them, I've been a bit embarrassed by them.
Why embarrassed?
Because it's not very good. I can see the flaw in it. I can see the timing slightly off here and there. It's usually the things that haven't been perfect that are the things that my eye is drawn to and my ear is drawn to. The further back I go, the more embarrassed I can become, because I can see. Times have changed, and there have been characters that I've played early on in my career, which I think probably weren't a good idea at the time, let alone now. So, I kind of shudder a little bit with some of the, the accent. I used to do a lot of accent work when I was younger, because I'm a sketch comic. We played different characters and characters with different heritage, and characters which these days you would be a little more sensitive to as you approached it. You think, well, I don't have lived experience with respect to that character or the heritage of that character that I'm playing. I think a lot of actors come to that conclusion too now. They think, I don't really have any particular insight into that character's personality, so I might leave that. I might leave that alone. So surface things I'm kind of a little bit uncomfortable about now. But yeah, I'd rather look forward to things. Yeah. In fact, most of my career now is about going back and either doing something that I didn't do properly 10 years ago. For example, I've got a show on the ABC now called Eve of Destruction, which is an interview show. It's more a kind of rolling conversation. I don't have any notes. We're just talking about a couple of things that one of the guests has brought in.
I was going to raise that because you obviously have developed quite a thick skin being in the media or in the public eye for many decades, because you retweeted a review which described Eve of Destruction as a terminally bland filler. I don't know if you remember, you put it on Twitter.
Oh, I remember that one.
And I'm like, it's got to hurt, no? It's got to hurt though, no? Because you've just mentioned that you've gone back to do things you think you could have done better, and then out comes something like this, which, doesn't have the loveliest of descriptions for it.
What I do is I tell people that I don't read reviews, but what actually happens is I read the reviews and then I remain usually quite silent about them. So people think I haven't read them.
Yeah, right.
But the truth is, it's unavoidable, and you would look at it because, other people are going to look at it and you think, well, how's that going to affect the way this particular show is received if people read a good review or read a bad review? But personally, I don't live or die on them because, you can't really. It doesn't make any difference. You can't change the way you do something because of what someone has said about you. And, if you give into that roller coaster, Antoinette, I don't need to tell you this, but if you start reading what's online about you, then you're done, really. Yeah. You can't let it affect you. But in that case, I had a good joke about it. It was a reasonably good headline, which is, terminally bland filler.
Yeah.
And so the response was, I was happy to retweet it and said, yes, but as a terminally bland filler goes, it's one of the best, So, which is kind of slightly paraphrasing a Woody Allen line, but I guess I was indicating that it didn't bother me, but of course, in the fact that I actually tweeted it meant that it probably did bother me deep down.
And your latest project is on SBS. It's called Shaun Micallef's Origin Odyssey. Let's take a little listen.
Each week, I'll be whisking a comedian away from their everyday Aussie life to embark on an epic odyssey.
Wow, China.
Welcome to Ireland.
Welcome to Sri Lanka, Shaun.
Sorry. With me as their expert guide.
So we got off at the wrong station. Come with me. Trust me.
So talk me through that process and the comedians that you went on this journey with.
When I finished up Mad as Hell, I was really keen to work with younger comics, to hopefully give them the benefit of my years of experience, and maybe that would help. And also I wanted to sort of do some documentary work as well, because I'd found what I had done quite interesting, and I thought that might be a fun thing to do. So when this offer came in to host this particular show, it ticked both those boxes. I got to meet and work with a whole bunch of younger comics, and many of them are probably the age of my kids. Aaron Chen, for example, is about the age of my middle child. Nina Oyama is about the age of my oldest boy. And, Lizzie, who's a little bit older, but she's closer to their age than my age. I think only Arj Barker might be in the same generation as me. So what was interesting, and what I thought would be interesting, was trying to find some common shared things that we could talk about, because we're comedians, though I'm a sketch comic and they're often stand-up comics. It was just such a wonderful opportunity to look at each other and go, okay, now so I'm thinking, I'm the host, I go, okay, where do you need me to be in this arrangement for you to shine? So in terms of, say, Aaron or any of them, really, it was a little dance that we ended up working out on the run. So we're only like 4 or 5 days together in these countries, and we have an objective in that we need to, go to the place of origin of the ancestor who ended up deciding to come to Australia. And then we look at the sliding doors and say, well, if they hadn't left and you were born here, would you be a comedian? The answer was usually no, because I think there's something about middle-class Australia and the comfort and the benefits and all those wonderful things about being born here, which is, enables you to have this sort of shrug-offable detachment and make jokes. But if you're actually in the country and you see, oh, okay, so if they were here, then I'd probably be born in this town. It's a small town. I might end up working in a munitions factory. I might end up doing this or that. So it was that. That was essentially the objective.
So you mentioned that this project ticked a couple of boxes for you because you wanted to get into documentary and do some, origin story digging. What boxes do you think you ticked for the multicultural broadcaster? Do you think they were looking for a middle-aged white man to host on SBS?
I guess I'm an avatar for the bulk of the Australian audience, and I'm also, for some, I suppose I'm a familiar face. And if we're talking about comedians, maybe, some people might regard me as I know certainly the reason I was asked to do it was because I was regarded as some sort of elder statesman or something in terms of comedy, and I might have something in common with the younger comedians, or at least be able to find that thing in common with the younger comedians. But my job was really just to make them feel comfortable and relaxed and able to make the offers that they did make in terms of the stories they were telling. And in a way, it's exactly what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to participate in the telling of someone else's story. That's why I gave up Mad as Hell. I was hoping, well, either we have a younger comedian host the show and have their take on it, or I help them tell their stories. And when I say help them tell their stories, in terms of the mechanics of it, because I think everybody's got a TV series in them. What's difficult is when you get to episode 3 or 4, and the turnaround, the fact that you might have to crank these things out every week. That's the challenge. That's when people often trip over. So I was hoping to do that behind the camera, but I can still do some of that in front of the camera. I mean, even with the interview show that I've got on at the moment, you know, for example, one of our first guests was young Felix Cameron, who's in Boy Swallows Universe, and he's like 14 years old, and he's not appeared in front of an audience, a live audience before, and he hasn't done television in that way before. So, you know, I thought, oh, well, great, I can help him tell his story of what it's like for a kid of that age to be telling Trent Dalton's story. So I think that's probably where I might go in the future, is that I'm more a facilitative person and help other people curate their own stories.
It's pretty obvious, though, when it comes to hosting comedy shows in Australia, that it's yourself, Charlie Pickering, Will Anderson, Guy Montgomery. Why do you think that in 2024 that still remains the kind of the monopoly on our public broadcasters as to who hosts comedy? Not to say that you're not great comedians, but what is it that doesn't allow other comedians, female comedians, comedians of colour, younger comedians, to then get an opportunity to do that?
I'm not sure I have a full answer for you, but I know the reason that I've long suspected the reason that I ended up on television in the first place was because it's precisely for the same reason that I'm still on television, because of my colour, because of my gender, because of my height, because of the deepness of my voice. I think I probably looked like what you would expect to see hosting a television program. And that made me an appealing prospect when it came to appearing on a show like Full Frontal, where I got to play newsreaders, I got to play a whole bunch of male characters that you would expect to see on television. And that's because I was representing what was on television at the time, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes. Especially when you're satirising those sorts of positions, and those positions were held by those sorts of people. Yeah.
That's right. So I'm just confirming the expectations of the audience, and I'm able to make those characters foolish or stupid or ill-informed. And often that's the sort of character I was playing. Often an ill-informed, idiot authority person who looked right but wasn't. You know, you could see them crumbling, and they clearly didn't deserve to be there, but for the fact that they looked right. And that's kind of what I've done for 30 years. Now, in that time, people get used to seeing me in that role. And in that time also, very slowly, I started to actually just throw away some of those things. Like I wasn't playing characters anymore that were that extreme. It was a more realistic character. Granted, it was still an idiot authority figure, but, you know, even as recently as Mad as Hell, I was playing a character that had my name and who pretended to be an expert or an interviewer or a journalist or whatever, but really they were, you know, by turns kind of not getting the point, or that they were not behaving as an interviewer would, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think audiences are used to me, and I think that makes me a comfortable proposition for a television network. And I think that might also apply to some of the other people that you've mentioned, is that people are just used to us. And so it's a comfortable fit.
I have a show pitch for you. Tell me what you think. A young brown comedian takes you and Will Anderson on a journey to understand your heritage and identity. What do you reckon?
No one's going to be interested in that, are they?
Why not? Why not?
Why on? Yeah, but why? Where am I going? Where am I going, Antoinette? Where are they taking me?
I mean, these are the sorts of questions you have to ask. You go back into various generations. You do some self-reflecting. You do some bad line dancing. I don't know.
I see. All right. Well, I would be going back to Malta. That's where my father comes from. I'd be going to Malta.
There you are. Yes, there you are. And your mother comes from Ireland, I understand. So you'll go to Ireland.
Yeah, Mum's grandmother comes from Ireland. So, yes, I'd be going back to County Clare. That's
right. We all have an origin story. And or not me, because I'm not a comedian, but somebody of my age and, you know, someone who doesn't host a TV show gets to host one and helps you on your journey.
Yeah, no, that would. I can't see why that wouldn't work. In fact, what happens in this series is that when Dilruk Jayasinghe and I go on our little trip, because we go to Colombo where he was born, he basically hosts the show because that's where he comes from. So I don't know anything that he doesn't already know, And in effect, he's taken me on that journey. So we sort of very subtly shift it around a little bit. I'm going to arrange a couple of surprises, but essentially it's him saying, well, here's my mum and dad, here's the market, here's where I grew up, here's this and that. So he's kind of hosting the show there. Have you? How many episodes have you seen?
I've seen two. Two.
Did you see Lizzie's? Lizzie Who's?
Yes.
Yeah, so Lizzie's is a great story because I think she picks the side of the family that I think audiences might not expect. So she, with a Chinese Malay father, chooses her mother's side of the family. So we go to Ireland for her story.
Yes.
It's fascinating. And what was so refreshing in a secondary way, I guess, for me, was that no one we met while we were in Ireland made any mention to the fact that she didn't look like the person in the pub who'd been there forever. They would just go, oh, you're from the Knoll family. Oh, yeah, they were this and that and this and that. And she, I won't speak for her, but by all accounts, perfectly at home, perfectly comfortable telling that story. And one of the funniest things was when we actually both we went past some service station which had a picture of Barack Obama. Oh, no, it was a statue of Barack Obama out the front. Because he's got Irish heritage. I mean, 60 million people around the world have Irish heritage, so you're hard pressed to find somebody without some Irish blood in them. But to your initial point, about whether we've quite embraced the idea of the diversity and the background of a particular performer on television being unremarkable. In other words, where we just don't see it and it doesn't matter, and it's.
And it all matters, and increasingly more hybrid, and cross-cultural marriages, and and so everyone has an origin story.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, I'm gonna get my people to call your people because I reckon I'm onto something, and who knows, Shaun, we may work together, we may get into some trouble together.
I look forward to it.
That is Shaun Micallef. You can check out the 6-part series Origin Odyssey, hosted by Shaun Micallef, on Tuesday, the 24th of September. That's both on SBS and SBS On Demand. It's that time of the weekend. It's probably your favourite time because it's fast becoming mine. It is the weekend list, and I couldn't do it without the help of my fabulous producer, Helen Smith, because she keeps me up to date on all the cool things to do, and we swap ideas, and we're often not listening or watching or eating or cooking or seeing the same things. So, Helen, what do you have this week?
My first recommendation is The Perfect Couple on Netflix.
Oh, I've seen the trailer. Yeah.
Yes. So this is the new series with Nicole Kidman starring in it. And the Shameless podcast girls described it really well. It is kind of like a mix of Big Little Lies and 9 Perfect Strangers.
Right.
That Nicole was in both.
Yes.
It follows this extremely wealthy family. And there was a murder. This is not a spoiler. There was a murder the night before a wedding.
Yes, I see this all in the trailer. Yes.
And oh my God, I think it starts out better than it ends though.
Right.
It is really beautifully shot, and just looking into like the life of this ultra wealth that is so ridiculous to like have staff and everything. I really like the way it unfolds though. It gives you kind of little Easter eggs and trickles throughout the whole episode. The ending is good, but I think you kind of figure it out by the time you get there.
Is this also based off another book from Leanne Moriarty? Because the other two that Nicole Kidman stars in are.
No, it's not, but it is a very similar style. It is still based off a book.
Yes.
But not by that author. It's by Ellen Hildebrand. So similar style though, similar vibe. Definitely recommend this one.
Look, I hate to have to chime in and be commenting on a person's appearance because I know that women get this a lot, and I'm all for people doing whatever they want with their appearance. It's just that Nicole's face is devoid of expression.
Yes, and I was thinking this throughout the whole time I was watching, and I was like, wow, she still can act. She's still acting with her eyes, and she's still...
Do you think she can? Because I find it really distracting.
I still think she could, but I was distracted by it because I did find myself thinking that, because I was like, her forehead obviously doesn't move.
Yes, because she plays these really complex characters who go through a huge amount.
But I think she still shows it. And I was like, damn, she's good. I was like, if I had that much like Botox in my head... I could not act like she could. Like, that's insane. Like, she's acting through her eyes and her tone of her voice and just her movements.
So she has to really, really act. And I think
she does.
And I know this is part of a larger conversation of how it's women aren't allowed to age
totally
gracefully or
and
naturally,
all the men do,
or whatever you want to call it. You know, I don't want to add any value judgments to remain relevant. While men can have more creases in their face than a basket of laundry that needs ironing, but women can't. And I know that there's a hypocrisy. I've just found Nicole difficult to watch because of the limited expressions.
No, I think that's a really fair comment. And yeah, as I said, I found myself noticing that throughout as well.
Well, I also have something to recommend to watch. It's not new. I just happened to stumble across it and found it absolutely hilarious. It's called Friends from College, and it's a Netflix comedy, and it's bite-sized. The episodes are about 25 minutes. And even though the premise seems a bit gross, like they're friends from college and they're all lying and unfaithful to their respective partners, the characters are selfish, they habitually hurt one another, but it is laugh-out-loud hilarious. It is hard to think of people who are really selfish, habitually hurt one another, really toxic, really disloyal to be so funny. Right. But I found myself spitting with laughter. It has an amazing cast, comedian Keegan-Michael Key and Kobe Smulders. She's from How I Met Your Mother. But the standout performance for me is from Max Adler, and he's best known for his role as Kevin Arnold in the US television series The Wonder Years from the 80s and 90s. So he was just a child actor then.
Right.
Anyway, I just could not stop laughing, and I binged on 2 seasons in 2 nights.
Oh my God, Antoinette. That's a lot.
That's a lot because I just could not stop laughing.
Oh my God. Okay, I'll definitely have to give this a go then. If you binge that, you don't binge like that.
I don't binge.
That's impressive. All right, that sounds really fun. I do love those kind of sitcom-y, kind of more comedy shows to just lighten up my week.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. What else do you have?
My next recommendation is an album by one of my favourite singers, Rex Orange County. His real name is Alex. He's a UK kind of indie pop musician, and his latest album is called The Alexander Technique. And it's kind of this indie pop. Some songs are a bit upbeat and faster, but I think the tone throughout the whole album is quite slower, more emotional, quite deep. My favourite songs on it are the guitar song, The Table in 2008. I think it's a really fresh take from him. He was in a bit of controversy maybe a few years ago over a sexual assault case, and you can definitely hear that in the music. He was cleared of all charges, but you can definitely hear the growth in his music since before that incident and after.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. My final recommendation is a book. It's by Dr. Karl, the beloved science communicator and wearer of bright shirts. It's his autobiography, A Periodic Tale, and I couldn't put it down. Look, I read a lot of books for work, and yes, I'm interviewing Dr. Karl, and you can check out his episode in an upcoming weekend briefing, but this wasn't work for me. I devoured the book because not only is he such an impressive man with this kind of enthusiasm for life, and he's well known on our screens, on our radio, but for me it was his fascinating and heartbreaking family history. And there's lots of stuff you wouldn't know about him, like how much of a weed-loving hippie he was for about 10 years of his life. He squatted for most of his 20s in a place in Glebe. He was a taxi driver for several years. He failed many times at many different careers before finally getting a medical degree in his 30s. And so I just loved how this man who we've come to know and love and really respect has this really colourful history that's full of ups and downs, plenty of downs. And if anything, it was about how you bounce back from those downs rather than because and I'm not going to get into too much details, but he failed and got fired and a whole bunch of stuff flopped. And you wouldn't know that based on his accolades and the fact that he is OAM and a whole bunch of other things. And so, yeah, absolutely love it and couldn't recommend it more.
I love that. And I think that just shows his resilience and how his positive energy and his passion really just shines through. And yeah, the chat with Dr. Karl was amazing. So I definitely recommend that as well.
Well, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for being with us and tuning in. It is always a pleasure hanging out with you. And if you want more of the Weekend Briefing, you can find us on the Listener app. You can download the Listener app in the App Store. Follow us there. Otherwise, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. And why not give us a rating and a review for this episode? If you're feeling generous, you've got a lot of time on your hands, or you just want to spread the love, you can rate and review every episode. We will be back on Monday morning where the team will have the latest headlines straight to your headphones, along with some interesting deep dives. Stay safe, everyone, and catch you next week.
Listener.